Déchirez pour qu'il n'en reste plus rien.
Watch as French patriots tear apart the European Union flag, calling for the country to leave the bloc.
Déchirez!
Tear it up. There's nothing else left to do. Frexit is the only solution. Liberate ourselves and be free people. An independent people and country. A sovereign people and country. Long live a free France. Frexit.
Frexit! 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 Frexit!
The weekend saw thousands descend on Paris brandishing the French flag, inspired by the Unite the Kingdom rally in London last month.
Frexit!
Locals were furious after it emerged Emmanuel Macron could share France's nuclear weapon with Germany and hand its permanent seat on the UN Security Council to the EU. Those in the street wanted French independence and lower immigration. Another gathering where the French brandished their flag was labelled by C News as the rally after London.
There are so many people here. We're so proud. Here we've got the French of all skin colours, all religions, and it's extraordinary. I'm proud to have rallied to the French, because in France we have the right to brandish our flag. We have the right to raise it high and strong. We all coordinate to create this movement.
Elsewhere, crowds chanted Frexit, inspired by Britain's decision to leave the EU. Organiser Florian Philippot called the march beautiful, a people rising up, flag in hand and shouting Frexit. That is to say freedom, future, independence, free France, we love France. Demands to leave the EU intensified after it emerged the newly installed finance minister, who lacks any democratic mandate, had said he envisaged France giving up its prized UN Security Council seat to the EU within the next 5 years, infuriating voters. The crowd also demanded Emmanuel Macron be impeached after a week of political turbulence as the country faces a financial cliff edge. Last week, France lost its 7th Prime Minister under Macron, until he was reappointed Friday night, stunning Paris and enraging the French. Since elections last year, there has been no majority in the parliament. The country is due to decide on next year's budget. But with France facing a debt crunch as its borrowing runs out of control, it will be a painful one, requiring tax rises and spending cuts. But no government has the MPs required to push their budget through, and the warring left and right have no incentive to help it pass. With each fallen government, their popularity only increases. After his reappointment, Prime Minister Lecornu said he was focused on bringing into cabinet those from across politics to ram a budget through. But political leaders are calling for fresh elections and for Emmanuel Macron to resign, both of which he refuses to do. This leaves the country in the grip of political brinkmanship as the budget deadline gets closer and the debt ticks up. National Rally leader Marine Le Pen confirmed her party would immediately file a censure motion to bring down the government, saying between the security, migrant, economic and budget crises our country is, since the start of September, in a political crisis without precedent under the Fifth Republic. Only a return to the people will allow us to make the big decisions necessary to exit these crises. She took to X accusing those in the government of being liars. Le Pen said her protégé, Jordan Bardella, would emerge from any election as the leader of the government in Parliament. The left are adamant they will not engage with the government unless Emmanuel Macron reverses his flagship pension reform, which increased the retirement age from 62 to 64. Asked if they bore any responsibility for the political theatre, their leader said agreement wasn't his job.
We are not elected to agree. We are elected to do what our voters have asked us to do. I think this government is a farce and will obviously fall, as there is no possibility of suspending the pension reform with the people who are in it. That is why the socialists will vote for censure, and we will, and the majority of the Assembly.
The French on the street were unimpressed.
Macron's government doesn't give a damn about its citizens, doesn't give a damn about the vote expressed a year ago, and this cannot go on. It's a kind of agony for the entire French people, businesses and workers, schools. They're putting us through agony, and it's pointless, just because there's a guy who's bent on staying in power.
Blame has largely been placed on President Macron, whose centrist reforms lie in tatters. France's debt has continued to accrue as the number of French voters casting Macron as a bad president nears 80%. Prime Minister Lecornu met with his new cabinet Monday, hoping to somehow cobble together a budget. He acknowledged the French have been stunned by the chaos.
Thank you for agreeing to join the government of the Republic at a time we know is difficult. And, ultimately, our sole objective and sole mission is obviously to overcome, to move beyond this political crisis in which we find ourselves, which is stunning some of our fellow citizens, which may also be stunning parts of the world that is watching us, and for which the responsibility that is yours, mine, ours, before the country and perhaps a little before history, all things being equal, obviously deserve constant commitment.
It's unlikely his government will succeed. As the crisis unfolds, some are talking about replacing the Fifth Republic, mired in stalemate, with a sixth. As factions struggle to gain control, many French voters believe politics has spilled into the courts. Marine Le Pen has been barred from running in the next presidential election, prompting a Trump-style reaction, according to French journalist Anne-Elisabeth Moutet.
What she said is that the judges were politically motivated. She gave instances which she says show that they were aiming to destroy her politically. She said that they gave the last ruling that was handed to her a week ago to journalists before one day before they gave it to they read it out to her in the court, which sounds strange. She went pretty much Trump on us, but she also, she made a very good speech because she's a good speaker. She's a barrister herself, and she said there was no personal enrichment and that she was singled out for something that other French politicians had done and had not been punished for. And she compared herself to the current Prime Minister, François Bayrou, who, to be honest, who's sort of did actually more or less the same thing, but not quite. And the differences are the difference between being let off because of doubt and Marine Le Pen not being left out because of doubt. But she was very well received by the crowd in front of her. She's next to the Invalides, where Napoleon lies still, and it will have an effect because when she's cornered, she's excellent.
But she's right, isn't she? That there are many politicians, it's all about the money that they're given to look after their, as it were, constituency, and the leftovers, they may have put into something else that might not have been on the list of things they're allowed to do, but lots of them have done that. So she is right in some respects, isn't she? And it's over a long period of time, isn't it?
It's not quite that. If you take other examples, what is she accused of? She's accused of having paid party workers in Paris with money that was supposed to pay for parliamentary assistance in Brussels.
Yeah.
In other cases, and the instance of François Bayrou, the centrist, is very good, is he had people who were working in Brussels actually, and then also were working in Paris, which made it difficult to differentiate. In her case, the 25 people in question never set foot in Brussels, never met the people they were supposed to work for. Her sister sent her an email saying, I shouldn't go to Strasbourg and meet people at the European Parliament, months after she was receiving a salary from the European Parliament. So it was much more egregious, it lasted longer, and it's 4 million euros that essentially from the European Parliament, paid by European taxpayers, that were used to finance the National Rally. And her own the financial director sent her a message saying, we are so happy that the party is on a better financial sounding, that we've got this income from Brussels. It was completely obvious that she knew perfectly well what was going on.
And former President Nicolas Sarkozy has been sentenced to prison in an unprecedented move.
Former French President Nicolas Sarkozy has been sentenced to 5 years in prison after being found guilty of criminal conspiracy linked to alleged former Libyan President Colonel Gaddafi. So the judge issued a deferred detention order. So he remains free for now, but prosecutors say he has 1 month. They have 1 month to notify him when he must begin a sentence. However, this isn't the usual suspended sentence. The court has made it clear he must serve the prison sentence if he appeals.
Now, he's 70 years old. This trial has lasted 3 months. It's quite a complicated story, isn't it?
It is complicated, and the courts found that while he couldn't prove he personally handled corruption, Sarkozy allowed key allies to solicit financial support from Gaddafi's regime, and it judged that this arrangement amounted to criminal conspiracy. And lots of French people are pretty angry because they don't really trust their politicians. This is one of the most significant corruption trials in modern French politics, and a rare case where a former French president has to face a prison sentence.
And this is, I suppose, another example of how what used to be the UMP and is now Les Républicains has just sort of vanished from the political scene. I mean, this was once a dominant party in France that is now just nowhere to be seen. And the largest parties are either sort of the newly created Macron vehicle or what's rebranded itself as National Rally.
Yes, absolutely. And so if there is another presidential election, then perhaps the National Rally could win the election. And the Republicans, as you just said, is nowhere to be seen. The leader is called Bruno Retailleau, who's the Minister of Interior. But I don't think he'll become president. But Sarkozy was president until 2012. He tried to become president again in 2017, but he didn't win the primaries. Sarkozy has influence in French politics. He met the newly appointed prime minister a few days ago. He often meets with the head of Macron's party, Gabriel Attal. So he really has influence in French politics. But for Sarkozy, who's 70, it's a big thing, and he was fined also 100,000 euros. Plus, the detention is deferred when enforcement begins. He might negotiate alternate forms of serving time, like an electronic tag, subject to French law.
Monday night, the Socialists and National Rally held true to their word. They forced 2 no-confidence votes in the government, which could see lecornu deposed before Friday. Nick Dunning, GB News.